The knock came at 7:12 a.m., the kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. 3 fast raps that turn your stomach to ice. I had pancake batter on my wrist and my hair twisted into a nurse's bun I never got around to taking down last night. Arlo and Jonah, my 7-year-old twins, were arguing about whether chocolate chips count as breakfast protein. I was halfway to saying yes because widowhood has a way of rewriting the food pyramid when the knocking came again. I opened the door to 2 people with laminated badges and neutral faces. "Miss Calder? I'm Ms. Ruiz with Child Protective Services. This is Officer Trent from Durham PD. We received a report of possible neglect." The word didn't land so much as detonate. Behind me, Arlo froze with a spatula. Jonah whispered, "Mom?" and slid his hand into mine. I felt the stickiness of syrup and fear. "I'm Marin," I said. "You can come in." I don't know why I said it. Maybe because I'm a nurse and compliance is muscle memory. Maybe because saying no felt like admitting there was something to hide. There wasn't. Except there was, just not in my house. Ms. Ruiz scanned the living room like a lens, quiet, practiced. She noticed the school calendars with star stickers, the chore chart with wonky handwriting, the basket of library books by the couch. Officer Trent mostly studied the floor. He looked like a man who hated mornings and hated this job even more. "We'll be brief," Ms. Ruiz said. "We'll need to see where the children sleep and ask a few questions." "Of course." My voice came out steady. "Good. Nurses learn to borrow calm from somewhere else when ours runs out." Arlo and Jonah led her down the hall, all elbows and curiosity. I caught Officer Trent's eye. "Can I ask who reported this?" He shifted. "It's anonymous, ma'am." Of course it was. I didn't need a name. I could smell the perfume from here. Powdery, expensive, weaponized. Sylvie Calder always found a way to arrive without ever showing up. My mother-in-law had opinions about everything from my grief schedule to my grocery list. She called the twins the Calder heirs, like we lived in a Southern Gothic novel instead of a mid-range ranch house with a leaky faucet. Since my husband, Elliot, died in a boating accident on Jordan Lake, Sylvie had been circling, soft voice, sharp talons. Boys need a proper family. A nurse's schedule is so unstable. We could help. Help was a synonym for takeover. Ms. Ruiz returned from the boys' room with a small smile that didn't quite reach relief. "They're very polite," she said. "And proud of their Lego city." "They collect city taxes," I said, because humor is a life raft. "They're ruthless." Officer Trent toured the kitchen, his gaze landing on the chore chart again. I saw his eyes flick to the note in the corner. Dad's Day, boat ride and burgers. The ink had bled where someone, me, had cried on it and pretended not to. "Miss Calder," Ms. Ruiz said more gently now. "The report mentioned nights alone." "I work at St. Albans," I said. "Cardiac step down. I've been on days since February. When I was on nights, my neighbor Mr. Whitlow sat with them. He's on the PTA and retired Army. The school has his info. So does our pediatrician." Documentation. I handed over a thick folder I'd built out of insomnia and a nurse's love of binders. Vaccination records, school attendance, aftercare receipts, my shift schedules, Mr. Whitlow's notarized statement, and a letter from our pediatrician that might as well have been titled "These kids are fine." Ms. Ruiz thumbed through it, eyebrows lifting once, twice. She asked to see the fridge. I opened it like I was presenting evidence to a jury. Fruit, milk, leftovers in labeled containers. A cake tin from a neighbor with "Love, Geneva" on blue tape. The twins would tell you Geneva's pound cake can solve almost anything. They might be right. The interview took 20 minutes. The boys showed Ms. Ruiz their tornado drill, which involved crawling under the dining table with headlamps. She asked them who made breakfast, who tucked them in, what made them feel safe. They said "Mom" 3 different ways and pancakes once. When it was over, Ms. Ruiz stood at the door with her clipboard. Her voice shifted into the official tone that says someone higher up might read this later. "Based on what I saw, I have no concerns at this time. We'll close the matter pending routine verification with the school. You'll receive a letter." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Relief is heavy when it hits. It makes your knees weak. As they turned to go, Officer Trent paused. "We get a lot of calls that are disputes in disguise," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss." After they left, I shut the door and slid down it until the cool wood met the back of my head. Arlo climbed into my lap. Jonah leaned into my side like a second heartbeat. Grandma wouldn't try to take us, right? Jonah asked, eyes too old for 7. I could have lied. I didn't. She can try, I said. But I won't let her. Arlo pressed the spatula against my palm. Pancakes are burning. We laughed, the kind that sounds like a crack turning into a window, and I flipped the next round like a magician. Butter hissed. Syrup pooled. The kitchen filled with the smell of something warm and ordinary, and for a moment, it almost felt like the life we had before the lake, before the call, before the casseroles and the quiet. The letter from CPS arrived 3 days later, crisp and clinical. Closed. Unfounded. I tucked it into the binder under a new tab I'd labeled in neat block letters. Legal. Because here's the part Sylvie didn't understand. Grief had carved me into something steadier, not softer. I had learned to chart vitals in the dark, to find a vein by touch, to keep breathing when the monitor flatlined. There are 100 ways to save a life if you know where to press. She had pushed first. I wasn't pushing back. I was building a case. And when the next knock came, because of course it wouldn't be anonymous. It would come with her signature on the bottom line. It started small, the way storms do, a flicker on the horizon you think you can ignore. 2 weeks after the CPS visit, I spotted Sylvie at the boys' school. She was standing at the edge of the playground in a cream wool coat, the kind that belongs in a magazine spread, not on wood chips. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but I knew the set of her jaw. I was volunteering for recess duty, part of my new visible parent strategy. Arlo was showing Jonah how to climb the rope ladder 2 rungs at a time when I saw her. The twins saw her too. Jonah's shoulders tensed, but Arlo waved. She lifted a gloved hand in a slow, almost regal gesture. It might have been sweet if I didn't know better. Sylvie's affection was like a spotlight. It made you feel seen, but it also blinded you to what was happening offstage. Mrs. Calder, I called, my voice bright enough to fool the other parents. You here for pickup? He smiled, slow and controlled. Just checking on my grandsons. They grow so fast. Her gaze skimmed over me like I was a smudge on the glass. I felt the parents nearby, Mrs. Keene from the PTA, Mr. Lee who coached soccer, take in the tension. And Sylvie wanted that. She thrived on planting seeds she could later claim were gossip she'd overheard. School policy says visitors check in at the front office, I said, still smiling. I'm not a visitor, she replied. I'm family. It was a line she'd used before. In the hospital after Elliot's accident, pushing past the nurse's station without signing in. The same tone, the same certainty that rules were for other people. I'm also family, I said, stepping closer so my voice didn't have to carry. And their legal guardian. That earned me the faintest curve of her lips. For now. The whistle blew for lineup. Arlo and Jonah jogged over, their faces caught between excitement and worry. Sylvie crouched to hug them, her perfume wrapping around them like static electricity. Remember, she murmured, not quite quietly enough, Grandma's always here for you. I watched her walk toward the parking lot, heels sharp against the pavement, and knew this wasn't about affection. It was about establishing presence, weaving herself into their routine so she could later claim she was already part of their daily lives. Family court eats that narrative up. That night I added a new section to my binder. Incidents, behavioral impact. I wrote down what I'd seen at the playground, the way the boys' moods shifted after her visits. I noted the date, time, location, and witnesses. Years of charting in patient files had made my handwriting precise, my language clinical. If she wanted to turn this into a case, I would turn my life into evidence. The following Saturday we were at the farmer's market picking out strawberries when Arlo asked, if Grandma lived with us would she make pancakes? Jonah shook his head. She'd make oatmeal. Without sugar. I crouched between them. Grandma has her way of doing things. I have mine. This is our home. Jonah's voice dropped. She said you work too much. There it was, the line she'd been feeding them. Planting doubt. She'd underestimated how much my kids told me. Or maybe she thought they'd keep her words secret out of loyalty. She's wrong, I said simply. And I can prove it. They didn't ask how. Kids don't need all the details to trust the person who's been there every morning and every night. 2 days later, a white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was Sylvie's. Rounded, perfect, expensive school cursive. Inside was a single sheet of legal stationery. Petition for custody modification. Pending hearing date to be determined. The petition claimed concerns regarding the children's welfare and inability of the custodial parent to provide consistent care. The phrase that stuck like glass in my throat: best interests of the children require a stable two-parent household provided by the paternal family. This was it, the formal move. The next knock. I called Daniel Avery before I even set the letter down. "She's filing for full custody," I said. My voice was steady, but my hand gripped the phone hard enough to leave marks. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Then we'll build her a courtroom she won't want to walk into." I slid the letter into the legal section of the binder, the paper crisp and thin between my fingers. Outside, Arlo and Jonah were in the yard, laughing over something only they understood. Inside, I was already sketching the battle plan. Sylvie thought this was a tug-of-war. It wasn't. It was a trap I'd been baiting for weeks. And she just stepped into it. Daniel's office smelled like fresh coffee and printer toner, the unofficial scent of preparation. I sat across from him, the custody petition spread out between us like a roadmap I already knew by heart. He didn't rush. Daniel was the kind of lawyer who could sit in silence until the other person blurted out everything just to fill the air. But I'd been an ICU nurse for 12 years. I knew how to hold silence too. Finally, he tapped the petition with his pen. "She's going for sole custody, Marin. That's ambitious. And reckless." "Ambitious is her love language," I said. We went line by line. Most of her claims were vague. Words like concern, instability, emotional impact. Nothing concrete. But vague is dangerous in family court. It gives the other side room to tell a story, and Sylvie loved stories where she was the heroine rescuing the poor children from the tragic widow. "Here's the good news," Daniel said, flipping a page. "Custody isn't changed without significant evidence. And what you've got, shift schedules, school records, character witnesses, paints you as stable. Extremely stable." I slid the binder across the desk. He opened it, eyebrows lifting at the labeled tabs. "Schedules, medical, school incidents, legal." "You've been busy," he said. "I've been ready," I corrected. That week, my life turned into an organized surveillance operation. I logged every interaction with Sylvie. The exact time she called, the tone she used, the words she chose. When she left me a voicemail saying the boys looked tired last weekend, maybe they'd sleep better here, I saved the file. I told Mr. Whitlow, our neighbor, what was going on. He'd been in the army long enough to know a campaign when he saw one. "You need allies," he said, and offered to be at the house whenever I couldn't be. At work, I let my charge nurse, Felicia, in on the situation. She rearranged my shifts so I could be at school drop-off and pick up more often. It wasn't just about parenting, it was about optics. In court, optics are evidence with better lighting. Sylvie didn't back off. One afternoon, I arrived at school pickup to find her standing by the fence again, talking to Jonah through the chain links. When she saw me, her smile didn't falter, but she stepped back slowly, like she was the one being gracious. "Just saying hello," she said. I walked past her without answering, but when I got home, I wrote the encounter in the binder. The boys stayed unusually quiet at dinner, and when I tucked them in, Arlo finally said, "Grandma told us her house is bigger. She said we'd have our own rooms." I smoothed his hair back. "A big room doesn't make a home," I said. "People do." The hearing date came in the mail 2 weeks later. Exactly 31 days from now. Daniel called that night. "I'm filing a counter-petition," he said. "Not just to keep custody but to limit her unsupervised access. And Marin," his voice dropped a note, "we're going to win this before it even starts." "How?" I asked. "By showing the judge that her behavior isn't just overstepping, it's destabilizing. And that you've been the adult in the room since day one." I hung up, the boys asleep in their beds, and stood in the quiet kitchen. The binder sat on the counter under the warm light, tabs lined up like soldiers. Sylvie thought this was about who loved the twins more. It wasn't. It was about who could prove it without saying a single word. The first move came from her side. A thick envelope arrived by courier on a Wednesday morning, just as I was packing the twins' lunches. The man in the brown jacket handed it over like it was nothing more than a pizza menu, but the weight of it told me otherwise. Inside, request for emergency hearing. Sylvie's attorney claimed the boys were experiencing emotional distress under my care and required an immediate change in living arrangements to prevent long-term psychological harm. I set the papers on the counter, watching peanut butter soak into white bread. My hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Daniel read the request in his office that afternoon, lips tightening. She's overplaying her hand, he said. Emergency hearings require actual emergencies. Abuse, neglect, unsafe living conditions. She's got none of that. She's got money, I said. He looked up. Money doesn't replace evidence. We filed an opposition within 24 hours, attaching my work evaluations, the boys' perfect attendance records, their pediatrician's statement, and sworn declarations from Mr. Whitlow and 2 other neighbors. But I didn't stop there. I asked Felicia to print out my hospital shift logs for the last 6 months, proof I'd been home more than I'd been away. I called the school counselor and got a note confirming both boys were well-adjusted and thriving academically. Every piece went into the binder under a new section, preemptive defense. The emergency hearing lasted exactly 15 minutes. The judge flipped through Sylvie's stack of evidence, which was mostly her own statements and a few cherry-picked text messages taken out of context. Mrs. Calder, he said, these claims do not meet the threshold for emergency action. The matter will proceed under the original hearing date. She didn't look at me when she left, but her attorney did. His expression said he was realizing his client might not be the asset he thought she was. That weekend I took the boys to the beach at Wrightsville. We built lopsided sandcastles and ate funnel cake until our fingers were sticky. I kept my phone in my bag, but when I checked it at the end of the day, there were 6 missed calls from Sylvie. No messages. Just calls. It was bait. I didn't take it. Instead, I printed my phone records and added them to incidents. The following Tuesday, Daniel called. She's requesting increased visitation before the hearing, he said, claiming it will help the boys transition smoothly. I laughed, sharp enough to surprise even myself. She wants to get her foot in the door. Exactly, he said. If the judge grants it, she'll use any small change to argue for a bigger one. So we stop it now. Daniel's tone shifted, low and deliberate. That's the plan. And Marin, start thinking about witnesses for the hearing. People who've seen you with the boys, know your routines, can speak to your parenting. I looked at the binder on my kitchen counter. It was already thick, the edges of the tabs soft from handling. Don't worry, I said. I've been thinking about that for months. Because in a fight like this, love is the reason you show up. But preparation is how you win. The next 3 weeks were a blur of precision. Mornings began with the boys' chatter over cereal and ended with me cross-referencing statements in the binder against school calendars. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was building a counterattack. My first witness was easy, Mr. Whitlow. Retired Army, calm under pressure, and the boys adored him. He'd seen it all. School drop-offs, scraped knees, bedtime stories when I was stuck on a double shift. His statement read like a steady heartbeat. Consistent, trustworthy, unshakable. Then there was Geneva, our neighbor 2 doors down, who'd been bringing over casseroles since Elliot's funeral. She was also the one who'd seen Sylvie parked outside our house for nearly an hour on a school day, just watching. Geneva kept a log of those dates without me even asking. I found my third witness in an unexpected place. The boys' soccer coach, Tomas Alvarez. He'd noticed how the twins' focus dipped after visits with Sylvie and how Jonah once told him, "Grandma says we might live with her soon." Tomas's declaration was short, but it cut right to the point. Stability matters more than square footage. Meanwhile, Daniel was pulling threads on Sylvie's side. She's been posting about the case on social media, he said one afternoon, sliding printouts across his desk. Family court judges hate that. I scanned the screenshots. Sylvie's carefully curated photos of the twins at family gatherings, captioned with phrases like "children deserve more than chaos." She never mentioned my name, but anyone who knew us could fill in the blanks. We added them to evidence. Public behavior. The closer we got to the hearing, the more Sylvie's tactics slipped into pettiness. One morning, the boys told me she'd asked them to keep a journal of what we did each day, something fun for Grandma to read. I kept my face neutral, but the second they were in school, I called Daniel. "She's coaching them," I said. "That's exactly how I'll frame it," he replied. "Judges see that as manipulation." By the time we hit the 1-week mark, the binder had doubled in size. The weight of it felt almost physical in my hands. Months of planning, every interaction documented, every slip on her part preserved in black and white. That Friday evening, as the boys worked on a puzzle at the kitchen table, I spread the binder open to the legal strategy tab. There, in Daniel's meticulous notes, was our sequence for the hearing. Establish my credibility with work and parenting records. Introduce witnesses to corroborate consistency and stability. Present Sylvie's documented oversteps and manipulations. Close with the boys' own guardian ad litem report. Neutral, professional, and solidly in my favor. It was clean. Surgical. The night before the hearing, I stood in the doorway of the twins' room. Arlo was sprawled on his back, one arm thrown over his head, and Jonah was curled around the stuffed bear Elliot had given him when he was 2. They looked safe. And I realized, that's what I was really fighting for. Not just legal custody. Not just a win in court. I was fighting for this. Their peace. Their normal. And tomorrow I'd make sure the judge saw it too. Family court in Durham doesn't look like the dramatic courtrooms you see on TV. No marble columns, no booming echoes. Just beige walls, soft carpet, and a judge who wears reading glasses halfway down his nose. It was quieter than I expected, which somehow made it worse. Sylvie sat 2 tables away, her navy suit so crisp it could cut paper. She didn't look at me, but she touched the strand of pearls at her neck the way some people touch a rosary. Her attorney, Mr. Carver, leaned toward her, whispering. She smiled at something he said, slow and deliberate. Daniel was next to me, flipping through our binder like he was checking a grocery list. His calm was contagious. Remember, he murmured, you're not on trial. You're demonstrating stability. Keep your answers short, factual, and calm. We want her looking like the storm. The judge called us to order and asked each side to give an opening statement. Mr. Carver went first. He painted Sylvie as a devoted grandmother, concerned for the emotional well-being of her grandsons, after the destabilizing loss of their father. He used words like continuity, legacy, family structure. He never said I was unfit, but the implication hung in the air like static before a lightning strike. Then it was Daniel's turn. He rose slowly like time was his ally. This case is not about who loves the children more, he began. It is about who has provided and continues to provide the consistent, stable, and nurturing environment these children need. And that person is and always has been their mother, Ms. Marin Calder. The evidence phase began. Daniel walked the judge through my hospital work schedules, school attendance records, and pediatrician letters. Mr. Whitlow testified first, his steady voice describing school pickups, bedtime stories, and nothing in that home that raises a single concern. Geneva followed, recounting the afternoons she saw Sylvie parked outside our house and how the boys seemed unsettled after certain visits. Then came Tomas Alvarez, the soccer coach. He spoke about the twins' progress, their resilience, and the noticeable shift in their focus after hearing comments about possibly living elsewhere. Kids this age, he told the judge, need to know home is permanent. Not a question mark. When it was Sylvie's turn, her tone was polished, almost sweet. She talked about wanting what's best, and ensuring the boys had every opportunity. But under cross-examination, Daniel pulled out the printouts of her social media posts. Mrs. Calder, he asked, do you believe it's appropriate to post photos of the children online accompanied by statements suggesting their current home life is chaotic? Her answer wavered. She called it venting to friends, but the damage was done. The judge's pen moved quickly across his notes. The final moment belonged to the guardian ad litem. She was neutral, concise, and devastating, in my favor. She recommended full custody remain with me and that all visits with Sylvie be supervised until a pattern of supportive, non-disruptive behavior could be established. When she finished, the judge adjusted his glasses and leaned forward. I've seen many custody disputes, he said. It's rare to see such thorough documentation from a parent. His gaze met mine. You've made your case, Ms. Calder. We were told the written order would be issued in a week. But I knew. From the way Sylvie's attorney avoided her eyes as they packed their files, from the subtle lift at the corner of Daniel's mouth, I knew we'd already won. The court order arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in a thick cream envelope, the kind that looked like it should hold wedding invitations, not the outcome of months of tension. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I made grilled cheese for the boys, listened to Jonah talk about his science project, and watched Arlo draw an elaborate map of an ant kingdom on scrap paper. When the house settled into the post-homework lull, I sat at the kitchen table and slit the envelope with the butter knife. The first line said everything. Custody to remain solely with Ms. Marin Calder. All visitation by the paternal grandmother to be supervised by the custodial parent or a court-approved third party. The rest was legal phrasing, jurisdiction schedules, directives, but I read it all twice. The words were heavy and solid like bricks in a wall I just finished building. I texted Daniel a photo of the order. 5 minutes later he called. This is as good as it gets, Marin. She can appeal, but the Guardian ad litem's report and your documentation? That's bulletproof. Thank you, I said, though the words felt too small for the relief in my chest. When I told the boys, I kept it simple. It just means things stay the same, I said. Our home is our home. Jonah smiled. Arlo asked if that meant we could get a dog. 2 days later, I saw Sylvie in the grocery store aisle 7 between the pasta and canned tomatoes. She was alone. No pearls, no armor. Just a woman studying a jar of marinara sauce like it might have the answer she wanted. She looked up, saw me, and her chin lifted. Congratulations, she said. The word was clipped, brittle. Thanks, I replied. For what it's worth, I hope you'll still see them. The right way. Something flickered in her eyes. Hurt, pride, maybe both. She turned back to the shelves without answering. That night, after the boys were asleep, I opened the binder one last time. It was thick, the spine slightly warped from use. I slid the court order into the front pocket and closed it. On the cover, in neat block letters, I wrote one final label: resolved. Grief had remade me into someone I didn't expect. Calmer in storms, sharper in fights. I'd learned that sometimes love means being soft, but sometimes it means being steel. Sylvie had wanted a tug-of-war. Instead, I built a fortress. And now, inside its walls, my boys could grow without looking over their shoulders.